My name is Kelly.
And my name is Will.
We are two Florida attorneys
Who love our 5 dogs.
and 2 cats.
And love listening to true crime.
Mainly me.
So I hope you enjoy our show as we delve into all things spooky.
This is For Crime's Sake.
Good morning, everybody.
We have Winston with us today.
Being cute with his squiggle tail and his big old satellite dish ears.
He went for a very long walk today and already this morning, and he got to see a bunch of little baby crabs.
He also got so hot and tired that he just laid his full stomach down in the sand underneath the shade.
And made you carry
and made
him.
me carry him for like a quarter of a mile.
That was adorable. When I turned back and just saw you holding him, he looked like so much like a baby.
He's a little angel baby. Kelly, what is on the docket this week?
So, on actually talking about the dogs, on that note, I'm really going to say maybe try to spend some more time with them. I felt like last week we were so busy doing everything between work and everything that it got crazy, and I feel like they did not get a ton of attention, and I think we should try to definitely make up for it this week.
For sure. That's a worthwhile goal because they're cute and need their parents.
And what about you, Will?
Well, mine is pretty exciting. I've been getting really into the idea of camping.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to try it for the first time this coming weekend.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to
Winston.
it. Yeah.
Love it. Winston, are you going to go camping with Daddy?
I'm going to take the stone baby and we're going to go be woodsmen.
Yeah, the only way I agreed to go camping was if it was glamping.
Yes, which might be on the docket later on this year, but this is going to just be regular camping with me and a chug.
So, for today's episode, we will be discussing the mysterious disappearance of Ray Gricar. And Ray was a prominent prosecutor. He was actually the elected DA in Pennsylvania, and he went missing in 2005 under suspicious circumstances. Sources for this episode include thecrimewire.com and pennlive.com. Ray Gricar was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1945, and he graduated from Case Western Reserve University with a degree in history and went on to get his law degree from Cleveland State University. And Ray began his career as an assistant district attorney in Ohio before moving to Pennsylvania in 1980.
And that feels awfully familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We both started our careers as assistant state attorneys.
And Ray served as the district attorney for Center County, Pennsylvania for over 20 years and was known for being a tough prosecutor who was passionate about seeking justice for victims of crime. He was particularly interested in cases involving child abuse and worked tirelessly to bring perpetrators to justice.
And I think it's worth noting right now at the outset that he was particularly interested in pursuing cases regarding child abuse because there is a theory that that is going to factor in heavily with. So keep that in mind.
So from what I've read and heard, Ray Gricar was a private, very reserved man. He wasn't someone who sought the spotlight, and he was, really content to work behind the scenes to make a difference.
And that's a good man and the kind of person you want prosecuting, because prosecuting is not supposed to be about favor. It's supposed to be about doing the right thing, and it sounds like that's what Ray was trying to do.
And actually, on that note, which I'm glad you mentioned that, because it got me thinking, is a lot of times people I've heard mention, well, the state did that because they want to win. But the real truth is the job of the state and of the prosecutors is not to actually quote unquote win. It's to make sure justice prevails, whatever that means.
That's absolutely correct, and we actually see it a lot in movies and on TV. You know, prosecutors with like 97% conviction rates and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, we all keep track. I'm not doing it anymore, but everyone keeps track of stats and stuff like that. But really, truly, the prosecutor who is out to win everything is a prosecutor who is approaching their role incorrectly.
Yes, exactly. So Ray was also an avid fan of rock and roll music and was known to play guitar in his spare time.
A man after my own heart.
Right? Around the time of Ray's disappearance, he was in a relationship with a woman named Patty Fornicola. And Patty actually worked as a clerk in Ray's office. So not only were they dating, but they also worked together, which I'm sure had its own struggles, but they seemed to be doing well.
Yeah, like a carpool.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, interestingly enough, they lived about a 5-minute drive from the office.
Very convenient.
Very convenient. They had been together for several years, too, at that point. And on April 15th, 2005, Ray decided to play hooky and to stay home and not go to work that day. And Ray was actually nearing retirement, and so this wasn't totally out of the realm of things that a person would do when they're that close to finishing their careers.
Playing hooky a little bit,
yes.
Not a bad idea.
No, and enjoying some of that time and some of the leave that you've accrued over the years, I'm sure.
Yeah, right? Public service.
Yep. And so at 11:30 on April 15th, Ray called Patty to let her know that he decided to go for a drive through the Brush Valley area, which was northeast of Center Hall. Ray liked to go on long drives, and that was something he actually enjoyed doing. He had a red Mini Cooper that he adored.
He did.
And he loved going for nice, quiet, long drives.
But what was unusual is that he left his cell phone at home that day, and that would have been very out of character for Ray.
Yes. So Patty finishes up the rest of her day at work and heads home, and Ray's still not back. So she decides to go to the gym, and when she gets back from the gym, Ray's still not back.
And that's a bad sign, I should think.
And she was worried at this point. Later on in that evening, Patty reported Ray missing. And one of the good things about being the elected DA is that investigators in Center County jumped right on this.
And that makes sense. You've got a missing elected official in a law enforcement role. I would think law enforcement would be inclined to find that individual.
Yes, and they started searching everywhere to try to locate Ray. The following day, Ray's red Mini Cooper was found in the parking lot of an antique store in Lewisburg. The car contained his county-issued cell phone, so his work cell phone, but his laptop computer, keys, and wallet were all missing.
And none of that's a good sign for hoping to find Ray in good shape.
Although, investigators did not see any signs of foul play either at that point.
Which is good news. That's something.
And the location of the vehicle is important because, sadly, Ray's older brother, Roy, had committed suicide in 1996, so 9 years before Ray disappears, by jumping from a bridge, and the car was located near this bridge. But in the following days, investigators searched for Ray's body in the river, and they found no sign of him. On July 30th, about 3 months after Ray disappeared, fishermen who were in the Susquehanna River found Ray's county-issued laptop.
Not a good sign.
No. And it was beneath a bridge between Lewisburg and Milton. But its hard drive was missing.
Also not a good sign.
But divers searched, and they never found any other sign of the hard drive at that point or anything in regards to Ray's body.
Very odd.
But 2 months after that, someone recovered a hard drive on the banks of the Susquehanna River, and it was about 100 yards from where the laptop was found.
Which is, at first blush, exciting news, because you'd think we're going to find out what was trying to be hidden.
Exactly. But it was damaged so badly that the FBI couldn't retrieve anything after a data recovery.
And that's pretty wild, because from experience on both sides of the criminal aisle, it is almost always possible to get something, especially, unless certain steps are taken.
Yeah.
And throwing a hard drive in the water is usually not good enough. But in this case, it seems that it was, or whatever was done was. But hopefully, one day, maybe that'll change.
And whatever someone was trying to hide, obviously that worked, right?
Clearly, it worked well enough.
Yep. So in April 2009, so this is, at this point, we're 4 years from when Ray disappeared. The police reveal that someone who had been using the home computer of Ray and Patty, they had done several interesting internet searches.
What for?
How to wreck a hard drive, how to fry a hard drive, and water damage to a notebook computer, which was interestingly what Ray's work laptop was.
And I know this isn't the point, but how to wreck a hard drive, that's such a funny thing to search, because a wreck, that word applies to ships.
Yeah.
Only ships. Not cars, not hard drives, only ships. But anyway, clearly somebody was looking up how to destroy a hard drive.
Yes.
And then a hard drive was destroyed.
Yes.
They were looking it up from Ray's house, and then Ray's hard drive was destroyed, and Ray is gone. Seems like Ray was probably looking up how to get rid of a hard drive.
Yes, that's what it appears to be, is it was his work laptop that he took that day on that long drive after he stayed home from work, and then the laptop went missing, was found in the river with the hard drive actually removed, found separately, and so severely damaged that nothing could retrieve any of the data on it.
And those facts, with absolutely nothing more, would lead me to conclude that he very likely committed suicide. But there are some more facts at issue here, aren't there?
Yes. So, on the day that Ray disappeared, so flashback to April 2005, multiple witnesses came forward and told police that they actually had spotted Ray that day. And interestingly enough, people reported seeing a man matching Ray's description in an antique store, which would make sense because that's,
where he was parked.
Exactly.
Or where the car was found, I
in
guess.
Lewisburg, but in the company of an unidentified woman.
And frustratingly, it seems that this unidentified woman, to this day in 2023, has remained unidentified.
Exactly. We had known nothing more about her. We don't even know for sure that was Ray, because they didn't say they saw Ray. They said they saw a man matching his description.
Because this was an antique mall in Lewisburg, and what are the odds that somebody in Lewisburg would just recognize Ray walking around and say, oh, that's Ray Gricar?
Exactly. So they recognized this man, but whether that was Ray or not, we don't know at this point, because that man, if it's not Ray, and that woman have never come forward.
Yes, and just for the record, Ray's family doesn't believe that these sightings were actually him. Whether that's true or not, don't know, but his family is of the opinion that it wasn't him.
So here's another weird fact that I'm going to give you. Now, remember when I told you that Ray loved his red Mini Cooper?
Mm-hmm.
Well, traces of cigarette ashes were found on the floor of his car, of Ray's car.
And Ray wasn't much of a smoker himself, was he?
Oh no, he hated the smell of smoke. And this car at this point, not only were there ashes, but it smelled heavy of cigarette smoke.
So we can probably pretty confidently say somebody else was either in that car or at some point leaned into that car with a cigarette.
Yes, because of the location of the ashes were found on the passenger side. So if someone had been hanging in his car with their cigarette in the car, that could explain it. Yeah, so they wouldn't have to necessarily be sitting there, but they would have definitely had to at least have been hanging in. And what I find interesting about this is that in that situation, whether it's someone actually sitting in the passenger seat or someone leaning in, Ray didn't feel either compelled or comfortable, exactly, asking them not to smoke or to get their cigarette out of the car.
Clearly he was not willing to say, exactly, don't do that in my car.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay, so just to recap the evidence and where we are so far, because unfortunately this kind of gets to the end of the physical evidence that we have to go off of. We know that Ray willfully left that day.
Yep.
He told his girlfriend that he was going for a drive.
Yes.
We know that his car showed up near an antiques mall in Lewisburg. And we know that was near rivers. We know it was near bridges. We know that his brother committed suicide several years before that in a fashion that would have led his family to think, oh, this feels familiar. And there was cigarette ash in the car, and the car smelled of cigarettes, and Ray was not a smoker, an adamant non-smoker. So...
Wait, did you mention the unidentified woman?
I didn't mention the unidentified woman.
Well, the reports of...
Or there's also the fact that somebody from Ray's home was searching how to destroy a hard drive. Ray's laptop disappeared, despite the fact that he was supposed to go to work the next day. And Ray's hard drive, when that finally showed up, was completely destroyed and unreadable.
And that is something that I took note of with the fact that if Ray was going to destroy the hard drive, get rid of the computer, he was, for all accounts, he was going to show up at work tomorrow. There was nothing to indicate that he wasn't, so I don't know what he was going to tell people.
One thing I've seen people mention about that is, well, he was about to retire, and it's not that unusual to want to maybe clear out your hard drive as you're getting close to retiring and turning your county computer back in, but most of us would not choose to do that by ripping the hard drive out and throwing both the hard drive and the computer in the water.
Especially after you drive to another area, like...
Yeah, that doesn't sound like just regular clearing out for retirement.
No, he was... If it was Ray, he definitely wanted to destroy evidence of something. And it might not have been something nefarious, right? It could have just been he didn't want his, passwords to any bank accounts or something like that to be found. We don't know. I can tell you... My dad gets very nervous about entering any sort of bank account information and stuff online. I get very nervous whenever I get rid of hard drives. Now, I don't do it the potential Ray Gricar version, but when I get rid of hard drives, I absolutely clear them. Not because there's anything sketchy or shady on there, but because there's probably personal data from things entered online, and I don't need that out in the world. Yeah. So there are several theories about what happened to Ray Gricar. And the first theory we have to mention is that Ray took his own life. And obviously, signs of this leading up to Ray's disappearance, Patty would tell investigators that Ray was sleeping an awful lot. And that he was seemingly less interested in some of the activities he typically enjoyed. Yes, which are common symptoms of depression. Ray's brother Roy also had struggled with a long battle, eventually losing his life to that battle with depression. Yeah, and there is, science supports that depression can be a genetic thing. So the fact that Ray's brother struggled with that means that it's not unlikely that he might have struggled with that. And while people that Ray worked with really respected him. A lot of people reported that they didn't know him super well, that he was very reserved, very private. And so I think a lot of common indicators of depression, if you are someone that keeps a lot of stuff to yourself, may go unnoticed, unfortunately.
Yeah, probably true. So there's not a ton of evidence, though, to support the theory that Ray took his own life. Yeah, all of those factors are things we can consider, but for one, a body was never found. There's no indication anywhere of him taking steps to end his own life. It's really just these other collateral things that make us think, okay, it would not have been outlandish to think from this maybe he was moving to take his own life. Not to mention this was a fairly rural area, so whether he jumped into the Susquehanna River and his body was somehow never found, even though it was heavily searched, or we really don't have any reason to say he did that. He could have gone somewhere else to take his life, but there's really no physical evidence of any kind to support that. It is entirely conjecture at this point.
Yes, and I think, unfortunately, when people do commit suicide, their bodies aren't always found. And that could be, the case in this situation. Unfortunately, we don't know all the facts, right? We're definitely missing some big steps, and that's what makes this case so hard.
And I think if there were nothing else for us to look at, other than he disappeared, he was looking at the laptop stuff, and then the laptop was destroyed, I would think that's a more compelling theory. But when we add in these other little pieces, the unidentified woman, the cigarette ash in the car, it becomes really different.
Yes, I think the fact that his search history on his computer was all about destroying that hard drive, it could mean that he really didn't want people to find out something that was on the computer.
Yeah. I would venture to say he absolutely didn't want anyone to find out what was on there.
And if he was planning on taking his own life, it makes me wonder what that was, because it was obviously important enough that he would care about it even after he was gone. Another theory is that Ray was a victim of foul play. And, for me personally, I'm a big believer in generally, that the absence of, physical evidence to support a murder or something like that generally means one didn't occur, right?
Yes, yeah,
is that fair?
Yes, it's
kind of how I normally, I'm like, if it's absence.
Well, it's kind of the Occam's razor thing.
Yeah.
It's like, where can we get making the fewest possible logical assumptions? And we have to assume a lot to get to homicide or kidnapping or foul play.
Exactly, and that's the thing. But there are a lot of factors to support it in this case. First off, his laptop was found without the hard drive, which suggests that someone took the hard drive out in order to conceal evidence of some type. There's also the fact that his car was parked, in the parking lot of the antique mall, but that antique mall was close to an abandoned school. And this is important because not only is it just a strange location, but it's possible he was lured there by someone. And this leads into that some people believe that Ray's disappearance has to do with Jerry Sandusky.
And this gets into a big one, because if you don't know the name Jerry Sandusky, you're probably a lot younger than us, but Jerry Sandusky was an assistant coach with Penn State for a long time. He was very famous in this area. He was very well respected. He worked for Joe Paterno, who was for a long time regarded as one of the greatest college football coaches in history. But Jerry Sandusky was ultimately arrested and convicted on an enormously large number of counts of sexual misconduct involving children, involving players, involving students. All kinds of horrible things that Jerry Sandusky did. And the reason Jerry Sandusky's name is important in this is because the first ever case of misconduct that was reported and investigated, I think as far as anyone is aware, was reported in Center County, Pennsylvania, and it was reported and investigated by Ray Gricar and his office, who ultimately declined to prosecute.
And that's noteworthy because, as I said in the beginning of this episode, Ray was a huge proponent of justice and was so
adamantly opposed
to
and
any violence involving children.
Yes,
and
he really hounded those cases, which does make that interesting.
Yeah, the fact that he chose not to pursue a case on that level is interesting.
And obviously that leads to, that can cut a number of different ways, and that's why this theory gets so much attention, I think, is because it could cut a whole bunch of different ways. One of the theories that comes from that is that whatever, and let me back up, this initial case that was brought to him was brought to Ray in 1998. Now, he disappears in 2005, so we're not talking like he made this decision not to prosecute and a week later he's gone. No, he made the decision.
Attenuated.
Yeah, it's pretty attenuated. But one of the things that comes up and that people have suggested is that maybe there was an ongoing investigation. And there was an ongoing investigation. Whether or not that investigation was being heavily spearheaded by Ray Gricar and was going to continue that way into his retirement, hard to say. But there is a really prominent theory that the connection to Jerry Sandusky and to these cases of sexual abuse of minors was in some way related to Ray's disappearance, and that maybe he had been lured out to Lewisburg and met with foul play as a result of that.
Did one of the victims go to that school? Was that the case?
Yes, I believe the very first victim was either from that school, or at one time Jerry Sandusky had been teaching at that school, and that led to some speculation that maybe because it was in that area, it was someone related to that matter who lured him out there.
The only thing that, troubles me with that theory, honestly, is that Ray declined to prosecute Jerry Sandusky. So the fact that it's related to that, I don't know. I don't know if I'm really...
Well, and that's when I say it cuts both ways. On one hand, you could say, was Penn State and their massive football organization willing to go to great lengths to lure him out there and make him disappear? Probably not. That's hard to believe.
And I'm not a huge fan of conspiracy theories. I always think they're lacking.
Well, and the other side is maybe it was a parent or a family member of that person who was the original victim, and that they had been holding a grudge against Ray for years at this point and then lured him out there. But again, either way you look at it, this theory requires enormous leaps of speculation and conjecture, because we have zero evidence whatsoever to suggest that he was lured out there or that any of this had anything to do with Jerry Sandusky.
Yes, and obviously the problem is we don't know what happened to Ray. But for me personally, this whole situation with Sandusky is a red herring.
I agree with that. I just
don't see it. I think it's too attenuated, and as I said, Ray declined to prosecute. So there's also nothing to suggest he was currently investigating it. And, I think at this point, this many years later, that would have come out. Hey, during this time, Ray was, doing some sort of quiet investigating into Sandusky, and there's just nothing to suggest that.
No, there's nothing to back that up. So this theory, for me also...
Yes, without something for more,
that's the thing. Without somebody...
else.
Yeah, there has to be some connection, and there's no connection other than we know Ray once declined to prosecute.
And then Jerry Sandusky...
years before. And then we know that, 11, 12 years later, Jerry Sandusky was arrested and charged.
Yep. But, maybe and it's kind of also far and removed from when Jerry Sandusky was arrested, but is it possible that Ray was feeling terrible about failing to prosecute that, and had anybody called him to find out anything behind that? Because obviously there was an investigation into Jerry Sandusky at this point,
and I mean, maybe that was growing and he was starting to feel some regret about that.
But again, that also requires a ton of speculation, and we don't have anything to support that, so yeah.
No, and obviously we can speculate again that the thing he was trying to get rid of on his laptop maybe had something to do with that, but we don't know.
Yeah, because that's the
we
thing
have no clue what was on that hard drive. None.
And I'm sure Ray was, investigating a bunch of different things.
A whole bunch of stuff.
Not just Jerry Sandusky.
He probably hadn't looked at Jerry Sandusky in
years.
7 or 8 years. Yeah. And then, of course, the final theory that is always at play in any disappearance, any mysterious disappearance, is could Ray have just decided he was going to walk away from his current life and disappear?
And the problem with that is, his bank accounts weren't touched. So no money. He obviously left with the clothes on his back.
His social security number has never been used anywhere else. He's never been found anywhere, living a different life.
His family and friends have had no contact with him.
He didn't take any clothes with him. He didn't take any other personal items besides that work cell phone and laptop. And, he even left, obviously, the laptop charger and case behind because he was going to destroy it. So, is it possible that Ray decided he was going to walk away from his life? Sure.
Is it likely?
Absolutely not.
Yes, this one doesn't hold a lot of weight with me personally. I think I just don't think it's likely that he would have just left this close to retirement. And also, Ray was dating Patty, but they weren't married. It would have been, relatively easy to end that relationship.
Yeah, it's not like he was tied down by anything.
And his daughter was in college at that point.
He had done his job as a parent. He had done his job as a DA. He was about ready to be free of both of those things. So, which also plays into the suicide question. It's like, could it have happened? Sure. But things really were going pretty well for him right then.
But we never know what people are struggling with internally. And, I think for me, the most confusing part, honestly, because I think there's a lot here to suggest a possible suicide, but that cigarette smoke.
That cigarette, that changes this entire narrative.
Because the sighting with the woman, I'm actually willing to say I don't think there's much of a connection necessarily to actually, being Ray. First of all, as I said previously, the man resembled Ray. He wasn't actually Ray people.
Right.
It wasn't
we have no one who knew Ray who saw him and said, that's Ray.
So I'm comfortable discarding that, but the cigarette smoke is odd. And it's not even like, okay, Ray smoked that cigarette. It was in the passenger side.
That's
so
the thing.
It's just weird.
Someone else was either in the car with him or leaning in through the window for some amount of time, and Ray was not willing to say, get your cigarette out of my car.
But if Ray was seriously depressed, maybe he honestly didn't care.
Maybe. Yeah.
And that could just be a red herring as well.
And unfortunately,
we won't know.
We won't know. And that's kind of where we're left.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of other information, and there is no other evidence for us to lean on.
And the case remains unsolved to this day. Investigators are still trying to piece together what happened to Ray Gricar. There have been a few tips over the years, but nothing that has led to any significant breakthroughs, unfortunately. And on July 25th, 2011, Ray was legally declared dead. Ray Gricar is a Caucasian male with graying brown hair and green eyes. He is 6 feet tall and weighs 172 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He was 59 years old. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Ray Gricar, please contact the Bellefonte Police Department at 814-353-2320 or call the Pennsylvania State Police tip line at 1-800-472-8477.
And at this point, new information is probably what it's going to take to solve this case.
Absolutely. If you have any information,
you got to share it.
Yep.
Because the physical evidence that exists right now, it's not good enough. Somebody knows something. Somebody had to have seen something. Somebody knows.
And somebody might not even know that they know. And that's why we try to share these stories, is to get people at least talking and to share it.
That's exactly right. It may not have occurred to them in 2005, but when you hear the story, maybe you think, oh, wow, I was there. I wonder if I saw something.
Yep.
That's a lot of times that's what it takes, and that's what we hope for here.
So Winston did great today. I'm very proud of him. And he's been great today in general, honestly, not even just for this.
He has. He's been a handsome little good baby boy.
He was very brave during his walk through the woods.
And he was very excited to get treats at the gate to the park.
My God, that was so cute. So where we go to take them for a walk is a state park. And the people at the front give him treats, and he gets so excited. So today when we drove up to the gate, he was like hanging, half his body was hanging out the window, and he was just crying and waiting for those treats.
He wanted them so bad.
It was his favorite part of today.
All right, guys, if you like this episode, make sure you share it, like us on Facebook, give us a review, a rating, whatever you want. And if you have any theories, any insights, please let us know.
Yeah, we're really curious what other people think, honestly. Until next Monday, I hope everyone has a good week.